Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Coming up on episode 362 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Kia EV6, the Ford Ranger Raptor, Honda Civic, and Genesis G70. Fiat's building charging cables into some of their new EVs. Chargepoint is putting NACS and CCS on a single cable. And we've got the 2025 GMC Terrain, pricing for the Dodge Charger Daytona, and more. All that coming up next. This is episode 362 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
And I'm Stephanie Brinley from S&P Global Mobility.
Thanks for joining us again today, Steph. I have no idea where Nicole is this weekend. She's up oh, no, I remember now. Let's see, this weekend she had some friends in town. They're doing a fancy brunch this morning. That's what it was.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That sounds lovely.
I'm drinking a Red Bull. And then later I'll probably eat some sunflower seeds.
I got a bottle of water.
Coffee.
Yeah. So that's our fancy brunch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did eat some oatmeal earlier this morning, so there's that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So, Robbie, what have you been driving?
So last week I had the Ford Ranger Raptor. So here's the weird thing about having the Ford Ranger Raptor. My wife looked out the window. She's like, "Who put this obnoxious car in front of our house?" And then she realized, it's another review car. I like the way it looks versus the regular Ranger. The regular Ranger just looks weird. It's just I just don't like the way it looks. Every time I'm like, ugh. it's very ugh. So all the
what do you find weird about it?
It's just something. It looks like a fish of some sort. It's. I don't know. It's just a weird look. I don't know. I don't like it.
Okay.
Proportions aren't right or something?
It's like the front of it feels. I don't know. It's just.
So why does the Raptor make it look better? Just because
they just throw a bunch of stuff on it to get rid of all the weirdness. They're covering up. They're putting lipstick on a pig, and the lipstick's nice. It's like a nice lipstick. It's like you went to Sephora. You waited in line. You like
the shade.
Yeah, you got some. You
got just enough gloss in there.
You use your Sephora card to get some points. So I like the way it looks. It's it's a Raptor, so it's more than most people will use. And so here's the issue with the Raptor in Northern California. There's nowhere I can go and do Raptor-y things for like 2 hours.
Yeah,
and I think that's sort of. So I'm driving it around. I'm driving more car than I need to go to Target, to go to Home Depot and pick up a few things, to pick up barbecue. Like these are all the things I did in the Raptor. I picked up barbecue. I think I drove the band practice once in it. It's
so you're basically using it the way an average consumer would.
That's the thing, is that I'm driving around. It's got these big, giant, knobby off-roady tires. And I feel like I'm just like, what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? This doesn't make any sense. And the issue is that a lot of people are sort of, this is what they want. They want this big, giant truck that does off-roady things, and then they never off-road. I felt bad for the big truck, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not being treated properly.
It's like when someone has a Husky, but they live in an apartment. That's what ordering a Ford Ranger Raptor is like when you don't take it and do the Raptory things.
Yeah.
You got a Husky, but you live in an apartment and you're breaking its poor little Husky soul. That's what I feel like I was doing with this vehicle. I got like 14 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
Which is just like, okay. Which, it's on par for a vehicle of this nature. But yeah, it drove nice for what it was, I guess. I don't know. I didn't get to do any off-roading. So I just drove around in a big truck and did and occasionally on the freeway, I gave it a little, gave it the beans, and it got, it gave me the appropriate response. And so I was able to outrun people. I was not outrun them, but let's say get ahead of them while getting on the freeway and passing and stuff. So it does all the things it's supposed to do as far as I know. And that's the sad thing is that I think a lot of people are going to get this vehicle and it's going to do all the things it's supposed to do as far as they know, because maybe they'll like once a year, they'll take it somewhere and they'll go off road and they'll do a thing. And I felt like if I lived in my hometown, there's nothing but there's dirt roads all over the place where I'm from.
Yeah.
So it would have been perfect to try it out there. And, where I'm from, there's a lot of trucks because there's a lot of trucks. People have horses and they're contractors and farriers and just all that jazz. So that makes sense. In the suburbs?
Well, and Raptor is more of a dirt runner.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely just like, yeah, it's like, here's a wide desert road. Let's go drive really quick.
So, I mean, as you guys probably, I don't know if you the people who can hear us, we are seeing each other, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked away a minute and I was clicking my machine madly and I was looking for some information. So from January through June of 2024, just under 19% of Ford Rangers registered in the U.S., according to S&P Global Mobility data, were Raptors. 19%, a little over 19% were XLs. 37% or so were XLT, and almost 17.5% were Lariats. So there's some other trim that I don't understand that's with 6%. So when you think about Raptor, it's actually a pretty even distribution for a lot of these trim levels.
Yeah,
it doesn't say that these guys
doing the thing.
are losing it for that, but it's not the overwhelming part. XLT is far and above. And so if you think about XLT being almost 37% and Lariat being about 17.5, you really are looking at more than half of F1 of Raptors are not. I mean, sorry, Rangers are those more suburban trim levels.
Yeah.
Your outliers are the base XL and the Raptor.
So you get the XL people who are buying it with Steelies, and then you get the Raptor people who are buying it and putting all the things on it. It's it's got a nice, it's got the 3-liter EcoBoost V6 engine, which works really well. You get locking front and rear axles. It had a hitch on it. Well, it didn't have the hitch. It had the hitch tube. I forget what it's called. The receiver. Yeah, it's got Fox racing shocks and all this stuff. I'm driving, thinking about all this. I'm like, if I just had the regular XL, I'd be so much happier.
If you get it like on a desert off-road type of course and put it in Baja mode, it's a hoot. You can hang the back end out.
That's the thing is it has all this potential, and unless you can actually like use the potential, I just feel sad for the. I just feel bad for it.
Take it out, run the Baja a couple times a year.
Yeah. And I do feel bad if somebody doesn't actually use it for what it's intended for, and they don't get the chance to do that. That does make me feel bad. But looking at these numbers here too says that the people who buy the Raptor have clearly made that choice. To go that direction, and I think that it's a good addition to the lineup, and it's good that it exists.
People.
If somebody doesn't do it precisely that way, just as having an XL and an XLT is part of the mix, and let that truck buyer choose which direction works for them.
There is a premium for this vehicle. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
they put a lot of stuff on it. So like this versus the XLT, that middle of the ground, the one that everyone gets essentially, is $20,000 difference. It's the XLT starts at 35,000. This starts at 55,000. So you are paying more. But if you're the person who really is going to do off-roady stuff, you're going to put all that stuff on your vehicle anyway.
And it
Everyone
would
with the
probably
Jeep.
cost you more to do it
To do it
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah, to source it all,
Buy
to
an
put it on,
XLT
to
or
do the
something.
thing. You don't have access to your truck for like a month at a time sometimes while it's in
Yeah.
the shop while they're waiting for a part or something broke or something. So if you live in the near the desert or in the mountains, or this is, it's a fun, if you live in Alaska, I always think about Alaska because they barely have roads in that state, or Hawaii, where a lot of roads are
Yeah.
sort of not real roads. But good luck beating the Tacoma. Like even get all the Tacoma people are just gonna they're gonna get
They'll
you.
laugh at you.
They'll laugh at you. But yeah, no, it's I prefer this over the F-150. The bigger trucks, I don't see, again, I don't think most people use the bigger trucks for all the bigger truck things. I think midsize and smaller trucks are really what most people need. I still think the best, well, I don't know now. I mean, the XL is 32,000 for the Ranger, and the Maverick is creeping up there, with the price increase recently. But overall, no, it's nice. It was nice interior. The shifter, it was weird. It's like most times when I get in a car and I do the shifter, I don't even have to look at it. It's it's the lever, and when you're down to it. This one, it just like it's so loose that I kept going past drive and past reverse, and it felt. I don't know. I think you'll just get used to it, but it was just kind of a weird thing that I noticed. Yeah. Overall, no, it's you want to. Again, if you're out in the desert or you have access to off road, this thing is, I'm assuming, again, pretty awesome. If you're just cruising around town, you're just kind of, again, it's a husky in an apartment building.
And the thing is, even though it's got 405 horsepower, so it's got nearly 100 horsepower more than the base or the 2.7 liter V6.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't actually feel that much quicker on the road because this thing weighs 900 pounds more than a standard 4-wheel drive Ranger, because it's got, you got the wider fenders, you got all the extra hardware on there, you got the skid plates. So steel skid plates add a shocking amount of weight to the thing. And so, it's a little quicker, but it's not a huge amount quicker than a regular Ranger.
Yeah, you're not gonna be like, whoa! It was enough.
Yeah,
you on the gas, and it's just enough to haul that weight around to get to where you're going. So, yeah, I for some reason the Ranger always feels like this vehicle. The Ranger and the Colorado always feel like vehicles that I forget about. They always feel like those because the Tacoma is just sort of, rules that segment. But I haven't driven Tacoma, I don't know, probably last year. I prefer the Ranger over that. I haven't driven the new Tacomas yet, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, there you go, Ford Ranger Raptor. If you live in my hometown, Tehachapi, go for it.
I like that Ranger has the variety and options and
because it's only like four trim levels, and they all make sense. The XL is like the people who I just need a truck. The XLT is like, I need a truck, but I want something a little bit nicer. The Lariat is, I'm a fancy person. I want my truck to feel less like a truck and more like something. I deserve. I went to I make the money. I deserve this. It's like when you get the extra shot of espresso. This is your extra. This is like I deserve supersize. And then the Raptors, when like, you know what? I want fun. I demand fun from my truck. And if you're a person that demands from fun from your truck, this is the one to get. As someone who with misspent youth who would ditch school every morning to go drive his dad's station wagon up in the dirt roads, I probably would have had a lot more fun in this Raptor. I did have fun in that station wagon though. It was a late 70s Dodge Aspen, all green interior and out.
Was it a
Yeah,
Slat 6?
yeah.
Oh,
When you
even
hit
better.
about 90 miles an hour, it would just do this weird hum. It was,
I'm surprised you could get that thing to 90 miles an hour with a Slat 6.
There's a long straightaway up above
okay.
up above Tehachapi. That just, and so when you get to it, it's all. Ooh, it's a, so
Mike-
yeah. There's the Ford Raptor. The Ford Raptor. Take it off roading. Don't leave it in
Yeah.
your apartment. That's my
Yep.
that's my
Yep.
go-to.
And even though, I mean, the Ranger Raptor is not cheap, it's actually a surprisingly good value when you compare it against the Tacoma TRD Pro, because the Tacoma TRD Pro starts at $64,000. So it's like,
Well, yeah.
$9,000 more than the Raptor.
And are you getting $9,000 more value out of that?
Well, I mean,
I don't-
you're not getting those crazy isodynamic seats that the Tacoma has.
Who cares? No, let's get
Yeah.
the Raptor. You're not so okay. Toyota people, I know you're Toyota people because Toyota people are always going to buy a Toyota. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Toyota for life. It's like in their, like they come out of the womb, and someone just like sticks a needle in them, and they're just DNA is just now set for Toyota. Maybe it's when their parents they meet at a Toyota meetup. I don't know, but Toyota people love Toyotas. They always love Toyotas. They will buy a Toyota with 15-year-old technology in it and be the happiest person on the planet because they know you could shoot a bazooka at the vehicle and it'll still start and drive away. It'll
have a hole in the side, but it'll still
have a hole.
drive.
And you know what? It's
Not
like a Wrangler now.
But it'll still run.
Take the doors off. You got the doors off like a Wrangler.
Yeah.
You boom. Now you don't have people.
There you go.
Like, how come we don't have the FJ Cruiser anymore? We're like, hey, just shoot it. Just rip the doors off. Drive away.
Right.
Excellent. All right. Steph, what have you been driving?
Well, there's been a few things, and I was trying to decide what to talk about today, and I settled down in the fact that I keep getting reminded that I really do prefer cars and sedans. I'm just utility vehicles and trucks are fine for their purpose, and some of them I enjoy more than others, and all of that. But I've got a Genesis G70 3.3 in the drive right now, and I'm just really enjoying it. 365 horsepower. It's fast enough. It's really comfortable, and you put it in sport mode, and it livens right up too, which I like a lot. And the other sedan that I was driving lately was the Honda Civic Sport Touring Hybrid, which is a lot of words for one car. But that
like half the car is just words. It just keeps going.
It just goes and goes and goes. But that's about 200 horsepower. And in that package, it feels really, really great. And so those two things were a lot of fun. The Civic is about 32,000. The Genesis is about 58. So there's a bit of a price difference to go along with the size difference. And of course, you can get the Genesis with the 4-cylinder as well. But both of them, I like being a little bit lower to the ground. I like the responsiveness. I like not feeling sort of the inherent body roll that you get in the big trucks. I like a big truck and an SUV that are like oversized and overpurposed, and you just sort of feel like you can just run over the world. But other than that, just give me a good sedan. I would say a good coupe, but those are pretty much gone. So I like both of those two things a lot. And there's some updates with the G70 with a little screen for HVAC in the interior, which is a little bit nice as well too. This one has a pretty chrome outside. It's a great blue. I would like to have a little bit more dark chrome in it, but on the exterior. But it's a really, really lovely vehicle to get into. At 58, it's up in sports sedan territory because you get into that space, and I think it's pretty comparable. So if you're in that area, it's a reasonable price, and the Civic at $32,000 is really attainable and really affordable. So people, rethink this whole anti-sedan thing, would you?
Buy more cars.
Buy a few more.
Buy more cars. I would
Lots more cars.
If you buy more cars, then I can get a car EV.
Right. Exactly.
We have an Ioniq 5, and it's just like it's a hatch. It looks like a hatchback, but it's really a little crossover. But it's just a range hatchback. Yeah. And so, but I would love if like my BRZ were electric, I would,
Right.
and buy
Well,
more
you do
cars,
the
people.
IX6 around in the existence of world.
Yeah, but the looks. I couldn't sell it. I couldn't sell it to my wife. Was like, I'm glad you didn't like. She sent me a text after we got the Ioniq 5. She's like, I just saw the Ioniq 6, and I'm happy that you didn't like the Ioniq 6. I'm like, no, I really like the Ioniq 6, but I know, and also the rear headroom thing in the Ioniq 6 is weird.
Yeah.
Plus the dogs.
Yeah, that would be tough.
And I've put the dogs in the BRZ. I mean, they weren't happy about it,
but
it
they
can be
survived.
done. Yeah, I mean the little one, she's fine. It's the big one. It's the German Shepherd. He's the one that's just like, what are we doing? Why are we in here? What have I done wrong to you? How have I wronged you?
You're like, yeah, we're just going to the park. It's all good.
But they fit fine in the Jaguar. We just stuck him in the back seat of that I can't remember the name. Yeah, the X-Type, that goddamn car. Pox on that car.
And yet it's still sitting in your driveway.
I know. Nope. It's just like, it's one of, like, I have a bunch of things I need to do to the BRZ, and that car actually I drive around, and so I need to take care of the BRZ stuff and then the Jaguar stuff. But like, I'm going to Detroit this week, and then next week I'm going to Germany, and you're just like,
right,
life, man.
Where
life.
When back on that Civic thing too, while the Sport Hybrid was cool and I enjoyed it, they did refresh the Civic Si as well. And so I think the Si, I want to say it's about 200 horsepower. Sam, help me out if I'm wrong. I think it's about 200 horsepower, which is about what the hybrid is. The hybrid's 200, and I think the Civic Si is 201. So you'd have two quite different flavors in the Civic in there as well too. And I don't know, I thought the hybrid was a lot of fun. But they still have the manual in the Civic Si too. So that's a good thing.
There is that. And that's
manuals
I think that's like one of the last manual transmission sedans you can get in the US now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. It may be the last.
Is there anything else?
Like a sedan?
Yeah. I don't think there is anymore.
Oh my god!
I think they're all gone.
I think did the BMW M3 manual go away too?
That one,
so. The all-wheel drive, I think. Is
the M3 went, because the 2 Series was still a manual up until recently, and I think that was the last one. Oh, M3 manual transmission.
Yeah,
I think you can still get the M3 in a manual.
All right.
I feel like,
but in terms of something affordable, it's
right.
the last one.
Yeah. Yes.
Sad times. Buy more manual transmission. It's just the kids who are buying the manual transmissions in the little enthusiast vehicles. So
yeah,
the kids are all right.
It's understandable.
Good job. Going. Keep going. Keep buying them.
Yeah, keep buying cars.
The hybrid is 200 horsepower total combined.
So they're the same.
Yeah.
The hybrid is 200. It's the Civic that I was trying to remember, or the SI that I was trying to remember which one it was.
Yeah, it says 200 for that as well.
Yeah. So, you can be efficient, or you
be fun.
And either way, you're pretty efficient. So.
Yeah. Cool. And I think, I like what they did, this current generation Civic, I thought was a little more boring looking than the previous generation, which is what we have. We own a 2017, the 10th gen model. The new one is, I think for 25, they made it a little more interesting in the front. I mean, it's not a dramatic difference, but just subtle enough that, it helps. So,
yeah, they did get a little bit more conservative with this gen.
Yeah. Honda tends to do that. They, they'll cycle back and forth between interesting and boring and interesting and boring. And so maybe the 12th gen will be more exciting again. We'll see.
Yeah. I wonder if they must have like internal, like, okay, if we make it interesting, we'll lose this segment, but we'll still have the boring ones on the, that they could for a few years. And then we just keep leapfrogging. So you get both types of driver who still wants a Civic.
There's a lot of consumer clinics. What are you going to complain about this year? We'll fix that.
We'll find.
You complain about the other way.
Yeah, we'll find something to complain about. You know what? As long as they don't put the vent controls in the touchscreen, everything else I can pretty much live with.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah, it's like
find a way to live with.
Yes. Vent controls on the touchscreen are
terrible idea.
Awful idea.
Yep.
Awful idea.
All
and
right.
even on the Ranger Raptor, the last Ranger that I drove, the changing the heated seats was like in the screen and really annoying.
The pain in the, like we have the heated seats for our vehicle. You have to hit the climate for it. Like in the Kona, it's just two little buttons right there in the center console, like hot, turn off hot. And now with the Ioniq 5, I have to go into climate control and then turn the heated seats on. It's no. Just make a button that says heat.
Yeah.
Hot butt.
Heat my backside.
I just want the hot butt button.
Yeah.
Yes.
HBB. That's a technical term. You might have heard it.
Yeah. I think I saw that in an SAE technical paper somewhere.
Yeah, it's one of the standards. I would say a number, but then someone will look it up, and that's the number I will just make up will probably be a real standard, and then they'll come on.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the Civic or the G70?
Just love them both. Just really, I do think they're both pretty well priced, and I do think they deliver some value in there as well. I do like Honda's honeycomb vents. That is a nice touch. It's held up over time.
Yeah.
And another thing that's lovely about Honda too is sometimes their interiors don't hold up over time. They hold up in terms of quality and all that, but they start to look dated more quickly, I feel like, than some other automakers. But the honeycomb thing is really held up well.
Cool. All right. Well, I had a crossover that isn't really a crossover, at least not for me. I don't, the way manufacturers classify a lot of vehicles today, there's a lot of stuff that they call crossovers that, like the Ioniq 5, not really a crossover.
It's a trick.
It's a hatchback.
It's just a marketing thing. That's what people want to buy.
Yeah. And that's fine. If you want to call it something else, go for it. But as long as you make it the way it is, I'm good with that. And the Kia EV6 is a perfect example of that. It is, what I would classify probably as like a shooting brake, or a small wagon. And I think it's a great shape. I personally, the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 are basically the same vehicle. They have this exact same mechanical components, same batteries, same motors, same electronics, just essentially just different styling that they sell through two different dealer networks. And the my personal preference is the EV6. The little sportier looking, a little more kind of wagon like, but not sleek. Like a big traditional wagon. Yeah, it's very sleek, much more sleek than the Ioniq 5. I like the Ioniq 5 too, but if it came down to, okay, it's time to buy a new vehicle, which one am I going to go for? Both my wife and I agree it's going to be the Kia. And if you prefer the more boxy look of the Ioniq 5, more power to you. Thankfully, that's why we have both of them. That's why Hyundai Motor Group has these 3 different brands. So they've got Genesis, it's got the GV60. That's a kind of a different take on it as well. You got the EV6 and the Ioniq 5. And so the EV6 I had this time around was the GT-Line. So it's the bigger battery, the 77.4 kilowatt hour battery. It's all-wheel drive. It's on 20-inch tires. And it came in the yacht blue color, which the one other thing that annoys me about the Ioniq 5 and the 6 and also the Kona EV is the color palette that Hyundai is offering on these cars is awful. It's like they'll have like one interesting color, like the Kona EV that's in the driveway right now. The one I have is this pale gray that is just boring.
We drove like an hour to get the blue for our Kona EV.
Yeah,
but we couldn't get any color but white for our Ioniq 5. So now we're stuck with a white EV.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
White's hard. White's difficult.
The only interesting color on the new Kona EV, you have the previous gen. The only interesting color on the new one is this yellow, which I like. I like the yellow, but don't have that one. Have the boring gray one. The EV6 I had was the yacht blue, which is a awesome shade of blue. It's gorgeous. And my wife looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, that is fantastic." So it's a really nice color. And personally, if we were shopping for an EV6, we would probably not go for the GT-Line all-wheel drive. We would go for the Wind, which is like the mid-level trim, and you give up the sunroof and you give up the heated rear seats, but you know what? If you're sitting in the back seat, who cares? You can be on your own.
I'm never
Your
back
kids are
there. What do I care?
Yeah, my kids are grown. They're out of the house. It's just
Listen, my dogs don't need heated seats.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. It's just us and the dogs. So the dogs are fine. They don't need heated seats. Although when we were going to the lake the other day, Morty did figure out how to put down the rear window. He was he had his paws up on the door armrest. He was looking out the window, and all of a sudden I hear the window going down, and he had clearly hit the switch with one of his paws. Yeah. So put that back up and lock the
Child
window.
locks.
Yep.
Child locks for the pup.
Yep. But driving the EV6, I really enjoyed driving, all of the EGMP cars. So the Ioniq 5, the 6, the EV6, the EV9, the GV60, really enjoyable to drive. It's quick. I don't necessarily need the 320 horsepower you get with the all-wheel drive. I
do.
I mean, with the instant torque that you get from an EV, the 225 is adequate. I'd be happy with it, as a daily driver.
It's adequate.
Yeah, I mean, the
do you have a sport mode? Do you have a sport mode? This is important as well. Yeah,
of course. So the 320 is great, but I don't need that most of the time. So, the 225 would be fine. Plus, you get a lot more range when you go with all-wheel drive. So between the Wind model and the rear-wheel drive, the GT-Line all-wheel drive I had has 20-inch wheels. The Wind is on 19s, and you with the all-wheel drive GT-Line, it's 252 miles of range, which is fine. But with the Wind rear-wheel drive, you get 320. So if you're going to be road tripping, a little bit nicer to have that extra range there. Although, I was really impressed with the efficiency I was getting. I was driving with air conditioning on most of the time because it was pretty hot when I had the car here, and did quite a bit of highway driving with it. And it still averaged 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. So, if I had run this thing all the way down, I probably could have gotten closer to about 270, 275, if I had pushed it all the way to the limit. So, these Hyundai Motor Group vehicles are really quite efficient. And, if you get the rear wheel drive with the 19s, getting well over 300 is not a problem at all. So, as I said, these things are roomy. You get the flat floor, so there's no transmission tunnel in the back. So if you need to take 3 in the back seat, there's enough leg room, there's enough headroom, and you don't have the transmission tunnel back there. They've got heat pump on there now for the climate control, which helps with the efficiency. And I really don't have any notable complaints about the EV6, except for price, which is more of a general complaint about the entire industry today, and particularly EVs. So the all-wheel drive GT-Line I had was $59,690 all in, and it starts at $57,600. Only had a couple options on there. The Syntex suede seat package, it's fine. The rear cargo mat and the carpeted floor mats and cargo cover. But if you don't feel like you absolutely need a brand new car, I've been looking around. You can actually find one of the one of the bad things and good things about EVs is that the depreciation is shockingly high, which if you're selling or trading in is not so great. But if you're willing to purchase, a 2-year-old relatively low mileage EV is fantastic, because you can get a rear wheel drive extended range wind with less than 20,000 miles on it for between $25,000 and $30,000.
That's a good deal, because this is still an 800-volt architecture vehicle, which means it's it's going to charge quicker, and that charge rate is going to stay higher during the charge cycle. You have more efficiency, and these vehicles, the whole GMP platform is great. The other day I was I needed to charge our Ioniq 5 for a video, and I forgot to tell my wife not to put it on the charger at home, because we just charge at home. And so I was driving around, but I was getting like 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour, But I just drove our Ioniq 5 down to LA or to Palm Springs and back, and it was great. It's just there you go, 300 miles. I was also doing 85 in the wind, and I didn't. But I was still I was getting like 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour with at 85 miles an hour the entire time. So, if you can get one of these for super, super cheap, I mean, it's a pretty sweet deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's a fair number of them. I was looking on Auto Trader. It's not hard to find these for well under 30 grand. Very nicely equipped. If you can manage to find one that's at 25, and I did find a couple that were right at that $25,000 mark, then it's also eligible for the IRA tax credit on used EVs, which means another $4,000 off of that. So conceivably, you could get one of these with under 25,000 miles for about 21 grand.
Jeez.
Yeah. So really got me thinking. So we'll see what happens.
You're like,
we've only got
super interesting.
We've only got 33,000 miles on the Civic, so it's not like my wife drives it a whole lot anyway. But maybe a year from now,
maybe
probably next year. We'll see. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the EV6. I like the way it looks, like the way it drives. The only real complaint is that panel they've got under the infotainment screen where and my wife discovered this just as I did the first time I drove one of these. She went to change the temperature and turned up the volume on the radio.
It just got louder in the car.
Yeah, it's like,
and the first time that I drove that, I think it was on temperature, and I was like, how do you adjust the volume? It took me a minute to figure out that there was a toggle in the touch screen, basically, in that panel. And that does not compute.
Yeah. The first time I drove one was when I drove it from here to Wisconsin for the Mama Spring Rally 2 years ago. And I'm trying to adjust the temperature, and I could not. Fortunately, it wasn't set at ridiculously high or low temperature, but I just wanted to adjust it by a couple of degrees, and I could not figure out how to do it. Actually, it was the other way around. I couldn't adjust the volume with the knob, so I ended up just using on the steering wheel. Fortunately, because it was on the temperature control. And when I got to Wisconsin, I talked to James Bell from Kia and said, how do you change the volume on the dashboard? And so he took me out and said, got to press this spot right here, and that toggles it between audio control and climate control. It's like,
yeah. Hopefully, when they deliver these to customers, they tell them, because it's not.
It's weird.
Well,
it's weird.
They're for model year 25. They're doing a mid-cycle refresh on the EV6 and also on the Ioniq 5, and I believe that is one of the things that they're changing for the 25 model year. And also, if you do want to buy a new one, because right now they're produced in Korea, so if you lease one, you can get the $7,500 off
there
on
are
the lease.
bonkers lease
Yeah.
deals for the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 right now. Just insane. Like
Yeah.
I looked up, like you can get an EV6 right now for $209 a month
Wow.
for
Yeah.
2 years. Like we got our Ioniq 5, it's the SEL for $230 a month.
Wow.
Hmm.
Well, in Q4, Hyundai is starting production at their new plant in Georgia, and they've publicly announced that the first product they're going to build there is the Ioniq 5. I would be shocked if they're not also building Ioniq 6s there shortly after they start production. And so once they're building those there, then it should have eligibility for the $7,500 credit on a purchase in addition to a lease.
They should, because then the batteries will be here.
Yeah, they'll be getting those batteries from SK in Georgia initially, and then later from the battery plant they're also building in near Savannah.
Mega
It'll take a minute to get everything
super
together.
Yeah.
Mega plant.
Mega plant. Yeah, I've written about it like 12 times a month. Mega super, radical Uber plant. What's that called again?
We can't just have plants anymore.
Everything has to have like yeah.
Thanks, Musk. Appreciate that one too.
Yeah,
marketing.
and everybody's copying that stupid gigafactory terms.
I know.
It's just a factory.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a gigafactory. It's a factory.
You know what? I have to use Gigafactory now for everything because that's how it's just like shorthand.
I refuse to write Gigafactory.
I know. Don. It every time I do it, I cringe and I feel a little bit. I die a little bit on the inside, but it's just that's whatever. Yeah.
Breaks your soul, huh?
It breaks your soul a little bit. I have heard that everyone's sort of saying, yeah. So.
Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media. All right. Well, let's get into some of the news of the week. Some couple of interesting charging related items. So first off, Fiat is showing in Europe, at least, they're showing a new version of the Panda EV with an integrated charging cable.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a really cool idea.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, and, in Europe, they have a lot of curbside charging where it's designed for, to bring your own cable. So there's just a post there with an outlet on it. And, so unlike chargers we see here that have a cable hanging off them that you got to find and hopefully
no one
it's
steals
long enough
it for the copper.
Hopefully nobody cuts it off and, and you get there and there's no cable or, you got to position your car to, to try and, if it's not long enough to get it to fit to where your charging port is, they have a lot of these, bring your own cable and you just plug it into the port on your car, plug it into the charging post and starts charging. So Fiat is doing that, but actually integrating the cable into the front fascia of the car. So it's like a coiled cable, kind of like what you find, for tire inflation hoses, things like that. And it's just, you open up the port, you pull it out, plug it into the post, and you're good to go. Hopefully we'll start to see some of that here, especially if we start to get some of these similar type of chargers, curbside chargers, now that, with J3400, with the support for 277 volt charging, make it easier to do that. So hopefully we'll start seeing some of that here in the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of the sort of just, it's a bollard or just a pole and you bring your own cable, just especially with curbside charging, because if you add the cable, you're creating all this additional complexity and you're sucking up room for people who are just walking down the street. People are just going to throw cables, they're going to knock cables over. This is
going to leave them on the road and some
leave them on the road. Someone drives over them, someone drops it, someone does this, someone does that. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't have cables on curbside charging stations. And all of them are A, they hurt the company, and B, they hurt the drivers because they hurt us. All these people are the benefit of having a curbside cable that's attached to the charging station is that it's just what you're used to. That's it. That's the only benefit. Everything else, it's expensive for the company. It's bad for people who are walking down the streets. They're going to get broken and ugly. And you have to, again, you're going to have to like pull forward, pull back, pull forward, pull back, because you have to have the cable like super long. Bring your own cable. You're just like, oh, here we go, blop, blop. You bring it in, you're good to go. Everyone's happy. And the Fiat, this cool little Fiat thing is awesome because it still has a regular charging port. If anyone's curious, like up in the rear left quarter panel, so it still has like just your regular DC fast charging. It's probably just CCS at this point, or it's European CCS.
Yes,
yeah, be CCS2.
Yeah,
CCS2. But yeah, this is great. I like this little, like you look at it like, oh, because then you get to bring your own cable, all the benefits of bring your own cable, but you don't have to open the trunk, take it out, plug it in. It's already ready to go, and it's, it's just it's just AC charging, so you already have that built into the vehicle, so you're good to you're ready to run.
Well, and talking about what people are used to, though, we don't have enough people yet
That's the other. Yeah, I think we
So
we have so much
if you want to,
opportunity to change so many
yes.
things because it's such early days.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there are EV owners now who are used to doing XYZ in a certain way, but it's 7.8% of the market. We're not quite there yet. So there's still a lot of people who don't know what it means and aren't used to something. Yeah, I'm in favor of the pull out plug. That's makes sense to me too.
Yeah, I just did an interview with Rodney McGee. He's the chairperson of the J3400 standard with SAE, and he's also a big proponent of this sort of curbside charging. And like one of the things when they were putting J3400 together, he's like, I wanted to make sure that we could have the bring your own cable. Like it's that one, the part that plugs into the bollard or the pull, that's universal. That's every country has the exact same plug. He's like, and it was to me, it was very important that we made sure that the J3400 standard supported the sort of bring your own cable AC charging. So.
And that's going to be, way more important, in the coming years, because right now, most of the people, or most people buying or driving EVs are buying new ones, and so those are customers that are more likely to have dedicated off-street parking. They're going to plug it in a garage or inside of their house, but the vast majority of Americans don't buy new cars; they buy used cars,
right?
And you're looking at somewhere between 40 and 50% of those people don't have dedicated off-street parking. They're parking curbside, or they're parking in a parking lot or a parking garage. And so, they're going to be reliant on public charging infrastructure having those people be reliant on DC charging is not the right solution.
No,
that puts way more strain on the grid. It's way more expensive.
Way more expensive.
Cars are still sitting idle most of the time. Either at night or during the day, they're sitting there parked somewhere. And so, if you can just put in a bunch of these bollards, with a plug on them, and you can just plug right into that, that's going to be way more convenient, way more cost effective for people. And a lot easier to deploy, way more of those, to put in a single DC fast charger, depending on the power level, is anywhere between $75,000 to $200,000 each, to install that. And then you've got the cost of the power for that, because you need so much more power. You've got to have, usually substation upgrades, or you got to put batteries on site. But, a commercial, public level 2 charger, is about $3,000 to $5,000, and probably even less, for one that doesn't have a cable on it. That's just a bollard. So that, that's a way better solution to get charging for way more people.
Yeah. And super urban is a huge opportunity there. It just makes sense. And we'll see it. We'll see it coming. I mean, there's a lot left to do.
Yeah.
On charging. There's a lot left to develop. And that one, answers or potentially answers some of the issues around whether DC fast is actually profitable for anybody yet.
Yep.
That, there's got to be some profit in there somewhere. Somebody needs to make some money off this. That's because it's just not free. You're not going to get a parity where you pay exactly what it costs to deliver that technology to you. And so if you can get the street side one and have a lower cost of the charger itself, lower cost of electricity, you're more affordable and probably have a little bit more opportunity for scale and for profit along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, given, well, especially, if it's, these types where you bring your own cable, the reliability is going to be a lot higher. The availability of the chargers is going to be a lot higher because, like you said, you don't have to worry about, vandals stealing cables for the copper because there's no cable to steal, and, it's simpler in every possible way. And so there's far less likelihood that it's going to be broken.
Yeah. As long as people remember to take the cables with them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sucks. It would be horrible if someone stole your cable or cut your cable while you were charging. But that's also incredibly dangerous. So they're less likely to do that. But if they do, I mean, and again, that's horrible, but that's a consumer product that's, $100 or whatever, versus if they cut the cable on an actual state that's part of the station. Now you got to bring an electrician out. Now you got to do, it's the impact is far higher when it's something that's actually part of the charging station versus, you plugging in a cable. It's like if you have a computer and a cable is coming straight out of the computer that plugs into the wall, if that gets cut, you're like, oh no, now I got to open the computer, and I don't want to do that. But if the computer has just like a laptop, and it just, you plug in a cable and you plug it into the wall, if that cable goes bad, you're like, I guess I just go to the, Best Buy, Apple Store. Fries isn't really a thing anymore.
Monoprice.
Yeah, Monoprice. Yeah, Monoprice. By the way, just not to be a big Monoprice fan, but I buy XLR cables for music all the time, and the Monoprice ones, they seem to last way longer than everyone else. So there you go. If you're in a band,
get your cables at Monoprice.
Get your XLR cables at Monoprice. I don't know why they keep because you'll be playing, practice, all of a sudden everything sounds horrible. Like, what's going on? Most of the times it's the cable. My Monoprice cables, I throw them in my bag. They just keep trucking. I don't know what they're doing over there, but yeah.
Well, speaking of cables and ports and stuff, Robbie, you paid a visit to Chargepoint the other day, didn't you?
I did. So they actually showed me this like a few months ago. But they're like, hey, you can't talk about this. I'm like, oh man. But finally I went down and saw it again, like official, was their new Omni Port adaptable charging solution is what it's essentially the Tesla Magic Dock. It's
kind of the Magic Dock in reverse.
It's the Magic Dock in reverse. And the Magic Dock, the default is NACS or the Tesla port. But you hit the little thing on your app and it gives you a CCS adapter that comes out. This is sort of the opposite. It's default CCS, but when you're using the station, you can say, oh, hey, I got a Tesla, or I have a car with NACS, and you hit the button and it comes out with the NACS adapter. So you can plug in your Tesla, and it works on both. They have it works on the AC. They have an AC charger with it, and they have a DC fast charger with it. And what's great is that the Tesla charging stations, they're like with 500 volt, 400 volt. The Chargepoint stations are 800 volt stations. So if you have a Porsche that, maybe when the Taycan switches over to NACS, you're going to get your 320 kilowatts. If
or a Hyundai and Kia,
or Hyundai,
or a Kia, or you get the Hyundai.
I saw those here at my local supercharger a couple weeks ago. Remember we talked about it, that they were testing. There was a couple of Steph. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I saw. I was pulling up to charge a Mach-E, and there was a camoed Ioniq 5 and an EV6. Which were clearly the refreshes.
Like horrible. I mean, they put so many things on it in the picture, but you still know what it is.
Yeah. And
they're so distinct.
And after I plugged in the Mach-E and kind of strolled over, I realized that what they were testing, both cars had NACS ports on them, J3400 ports on them. So when they start building those Ioniq 5s in Georgia and EV6s, they're probably going to be equipped with that J3400 port. Because that's what they were testing at the supercharger station near my house.
So so if you get one of those new Ioniq 5s or EV6s, probably mid next year, you'll be able to go to a Chargepoint station, and you're like, oh, hey, I have, I don't have CCS,
that's good.
I have NACS, and you can just push the little button, and it just pops out with it. It plugs in, and it works, and It's a really nice solution, because their current solution is that you'll go to a station and one side is, this is the same thing with EA, where you go to CHAdeMO and CCS. You can go to a Chargepoint station and it's CCS or NACS, and sometimes it has CHAdeMO as well. So one side is both and the other side is something else. Now both sides can be both CCS and NACS. The thing, Chargepoint's business is different from like EA or EVgo, where they don't just put the deploy stuff. Like, people buy the stations and then they take care of the back end. They're more of a supplier of charging stations for people. They're working with, but like the new Mercedes charging station
Network.
or locations, those are Chargepoint chargers.
Yeah.
So these will start proliferating. They said they're going to be available by the end of the year. They told me like they're saying probably September, but and I think it's a great like mid. It's not long term because at long term it'd just be all NACS, but midterm I guess solution to this while we're sort of transitioning over. Where if you can only put like 8 charging stations at a location, you would have to, how many are going to be NACS? How many are going to be CCS? You're trying to figure it out. And if someone pulls up with like a CCS car and all the CCS stations are full, but the NACS stations are available, you're just like, well, unless you have the adapter, you're kind of SOL. This way, all 8 stations will do both.
Yep.
Unless you have a Leaf with Chatamo, then I don't know.
And from reading the press release, they're also ChargePoint station owners or charger owners are going to be able to retrofit most of the existing ones with the Omni Port, right?
Yeah. If you already have this station, which I believe is the Express Plus Power Link 2000, I think it's that one. For all the people who listen to this who own ChargePoint, if you have the stations, you can get there's a nominal price to upgrade.
I think it says like a few $100s or something.
Yeah, but if you buy a new one, it just comes with the Omni Port. You don't have to pay extra. It's not like an option. Like all the new ones that come out of these 2 stations that supports this, all of them will come with the Omni Port. So in the future, they'll all be I guess beginning at the end of this year, they'll all come with the CCS and NACS adapter, which again is great because
it is. Well, and that's this whole the whole EV industry evolving. I mean, that's still we're going to still see more solutions like that as NACS comes more online, and we're still trying to figure out what we want and what we need. Even talking about the curbside, all those things take time to figure out what consumers really need and what they're really going to do. But that's a super solution. And I think, part of it is, while going to NACS enables Tesla's supercharger network, which is big and huge, it's never going to be the only network, or it shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. You don't only have one gas station brand. So you need to make sure that people can access with whatever car they have all of these networks. And so, for now, having both is going to be the way to go. I mean, it makes sense at some point. But once you've got it in there, you just get it in there.
Yeah.
Have either of you heard anything from Electrify America or EVgo if they're planning a similar type of solution for their stations?
I haven't heard from about this, which is I should probably reach out and talk to them. I did sort of my job to do that. So
Electrify America said they're going to address it, but I don't know.
They haven't said how
they're going to.
They haven't said how.
They might do one of with the current ChargePoint solution is one cable is NACS, one cable is CCS, just like where they have like Chatamo and CCS on the same station.
Well, it's interesting though, because even with the news that it's possible, I mean, you've got to stop and ask the question, or they do, wait a second, is it really the best way to do things? I mean, it's a big commitment for the people who are buying one now, unless, you make sure that, as ChargePoint is make sure it's backward compatible, at least you can do it that. And that, I think, kind of highlights some of the interesting things about charging stations as they go forward too, is it changes. What we need changes a little bit. And I don't think we're fully settled on exactly what we need. We're getting closer than we are. I mean, Electrify America, part of the reason it was so bad to begin with is because they didn't really know how to make a robust charging station. It took time to figure that out, and we're still at the beginning of this.
Yeah, because the Tesla network wasn't great when it first launched. There was a lot of problems that we don't really talk about because it happened so long ago, and it was such a small, like 0.03% of car buyers were dealing with these. But those people were first adopters, so they were willing to deal with the issues around like what was going on. And I like to tell people we're still at the Nokia brick phone phase of EVs. We're not at Blackberries. We're not at Palm Pilots. We're definitely not smartphones. We're still like pretty early days. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of things that are still sort of coming up. And when I was talking to the CEO of Lamborghini, he's like, we don't know what we don't know. He's like, what we're talking about now, we might not be talking about in 5 years when it comes to electrification. He's like, everything is moving so quickly, so we don't we don't know what we don't know. So it's fun to talk about it, and it's fun to guess, but things are moving so quickly. And as as we're trying to settle this and make sure that it works for everyone, and that's the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's stay with some EV stuff and finish up a couple more EV things before we transition back to gas. Yesterday, Friday, we were at M1 Concourse in Pontiac for a Dodge event, and this week they announced pricing for the Charger Daytona, which is coming sometime soonish. Maybe hopefully sometime this fall. But we got pricing on the first two versions of the Charger Daytona, which are coming out. And those are both it's the 2-door. So, and they're both dual motor EV. Let's see, the base model, the RT, with the direct connection stage 1 upgrade, is like 496 horsepower. And they don't say what the performance is, what the acceleration is with that one, but the Scat Pack, the quicker one, is going to be 670 horsepower, 627 pounds-feet of torque, 3.3 seconds 0 to 60. The RT starts at about, let's see, $59,595 plus $2,000 destination, so 61,600 for the RT, and then 73,190, so 75,190 for the Scat Pack, which will be quicker than the old Hellcat Charger, quicker to accelerate anyway. Right. We don't know about other performance characteristics, but quicker to accelerate. And then the 6-cylinder models will be coming out sometime in the second half of next year. And there's also the 3-motor Banshee and the 4 doors that are coming out sometime next year. So we finally got a chance to hear in person what the sound of these things, the Fratsonic exhaust system, is going to sound like. What did you think of it?
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued still. I did think it sounded cool, but the thing of it too is how does it sound and feel when you're driving it is going to be for me whether or not it's better, whether or not it's well executed. Because to some degree, it's less important whether your neighbor hears it, except it is, we're talking about Hellcat fires, right? But no, I think it's for me.
What are you implying about Hellcat buyers?
If you got a big
that they might be a little antisocial.
The Hellcat buyers are the Harley Davidson buyers of the car world. They're like, look at me,
you gotta make noise, but for me, the sound issue for me is much more about the driving experience, even than it is whether or not I'm loud to my neighbors, and that's how well does it integrate when you accelerate, when you brake, and how does it feel when you're driving it is going to be the thing, because sound for electric vehicles, again, not to repeat, we're still in early days, right? But sound for EVs is something that we don't really know how to solve yet. There's the natural sound doesn't make sense, and sound is one of any person's 5 senses, and it's really critical when you're driving, at least the way that we've experienced it in the past. And so you have to adjust for that and understand it. And I think that it's not clear what the right, quote unquote, right sound is for an EV. So there's a lot of playing out there to figure out what it might be. So I'm very intrigued by the solution. It sounded pretty neat when they did it, but whether or not I find it to be effective and actually work will depend on the connection to the driving. The way they describe it, it seems like they understand it. They know what they wanted to do. I give them great kudos for trying. And it is a sound. It's not a piped-in old Hellcat engine sound. So it is something to do with what's going on with the vehicle. So, waiting on execution for really being behind the wheel, but I'm intrigued, and I am glad they're doing it. Even if it doesn't work, man, we're still on this we're still trying to figure out everything on this. So even if it doesn't come off perfectly, and some people love it and some people hate it, and it gets tweaked and it gets evolved, and this is an iterative process.
Well,
and it still is.
Yeah, and one nice thing about this, is that if people don't like the sound,
you can turn it off.
You can turn it off, but you can also, it's software controlling.
Yep.
So you can always push out an OTA software update. I would be shocked if they don't offer the ability to purchase different sounds. If you want your Charger to sound completely different, why not? Give it, have an option to make it sound exactly like a Hellcat or anything
just make
else.
it sound like a horde of bees.
Or a fighter jet.
Yeah. Well, when they first showed the concept 2 years ago, that one had a very different sound.
It was very different.
It was, more like a scream, which went along with, with the Banshee name that they had on it, and we still don't know many details on that 3-motor Banshee that's coming. That one may end up sounding more like what we heard 2 years ago. Who knows? Or it might be something else entirely different altogether. So, but that's one, unlike, with an internal combustion engine, if you want to change the sound of that, you got to rip out, all the exhaust system and do something different. Here you can just, put in a software update and have something complete, a totally different sound. Cause there's speakers under the back end of the car, with a resonance chamber, putting out the sound, and it can be anything, literally anything. So, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, there was one paragraph in that press release that I was like, nope.
What was that?
Not a sound person. I don't understand. I was like, I got to look up all these words.
I've been traveling, and then I got trapped in Philly and then trapped in Detroit. And then Detroit, at one point during my travels at Detroit airport, the Popeyes ran out of chicken. I was very depressed about that. But what's it
sound like? You should have just called me. I would have brought you some.
No, it was fine. Like
I'm only 20 minutes away from the airport.
I know, but it was like midnight when I'm on my way back. So what does it sound like? I haven't had a chance to play the video that they have.
Let's see, where is it here?
Should I just play the video and listen to it?
Yeah, you can try that. See if it'll play.
Yeah.
They don't have that teaser clip linked here in the press release.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
I listened to it on Ars Technica site.
Okay. It's more like a rumble, like
it's more
from a big V8 engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had two sitting there at the demonstration or whatever that were just revving up.
Yeah.
And they had one pull in. So you got to hear it when we were
I like that they're revving up. Like I've never thought about revving up my EV.
It's just, sitting there, tapping on the accelerator pedal, making sound.
I don't even know what happens if I leave any of my EVs in park and just like start hitting the accelerator. I don't think anything happens.
Nothing.
I think it's just the car's just like, what are you talking about?
If you get if you get an Ioniq 5N, and put it into the N mode and turn on all that stuff, it'll do that. But
don't get me started about the Ioniq 5N and how I was invited to the track and I wasn't able to do it because of my email. My email threw it into the spam folder, and I'm still angry about that. And anytime someone says, I finally got some time with the Ioniq 5N, I just get angry at them.
I wasn't able to go either. So, it wasn't an email problem. Yeah. It was more other stuff, but I wasn't able, and I was very, very upset.
I had a speaking engagement already scheduled in Florida that week, and so I couldn't go. But I do have one scheduled now.
It's a trident of sadness here in the podcast. Just the sad. All three of it.
Oh, we have such big problems here, don't we?
A chorus of sad trombone. But it's important that we drive this vehicle so we can tell everyone on the podcast how it feels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other than just being super jealous of everyone else.
I did get to drive it briefly at the Mama Spring Rally, which we talked about back.
Okay.
And so I got to do one lap of Road America with it, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
I like Ioniq 5N and the Dodge Charger stuff, wanting to be sporty with it, really sporty with it, because honestly, just going 0 to 60 in 2 seconds in a straight line is not my definition of actually being. I mean, I did go watch drag racing for about 4 or 5 hours yesterday, which was interesting, and is exactly that. But was more fun to watch. When I'm driving, I want to do much more than that, and so I think that the EV focus up until Ioniq 5N and this Charger has been on that, or at least the conversation has been, look, you can go really fast
in a straight line. Whoop-de-doo.
Yay! Awesome. That's why I'm going to buy you. But
and it'll simulate shifting.
And it'll simulate shifting. And even so, we've of course focused on so many crossovers with entry to electric vehicles, and you want to get into the most addressable market that you can, and crossovers is it. It all makes sense. But I'm like, people still like to drive, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully.
At least
and Dodge is saying,
I do.
We still like to drive, and we're going to try and figure out how to make our formula work in a different environment. And whether it works perfectly or not, I'm really glad they're doing it, and I'm really glad Ioniq 5N exists. Ioniq 5N, yes, exists. And eventually I'll get to drive it. And I was so excited to see that we're moving in that direction, that we're still going to have Civic SIs of the world. We're still going to have those things.
I want to go left and right in my.
I know.
Which is crazy because the Charger, like muscle cars are perfect EV. Because a muscle car, you just in a straight line. I grew up with muscle cars, and I got bored with them very quickly as a kid, because I was like,
they get better.
Yeah, I want to go left and right. I want to do this
in
a fun way, and so that's what I want. I just want a Miata or a BRZ EV. That's all I want in the world.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
All right. So when we were on vacation a couple weeks ago, my wife finally got to see a Cybertruck in person.
Oh no.
She was not impressed.
No.
I tried to get her to come over and just touch the edge of this stainless steel, see what it feels like. She said, nope, not going to touch it. This thing's stupid. Apparently, the number of out of the supposedly million people that they claimed had made reservations.
We barely hit on the pricing, Sam. We barely hit on the pricing.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Which is one way. Okay.
So
thank you.
They claim, Tesla was claiming, 1 million people had made reservations for a Cybertruck. They've delivered somewhere around 16,000 or so at this point. The Tesla has gotten rid of the reservation system. There's no more requirements for a reservation. If you want to order one, you can now order one and get it within a couple of weeks. And they've also, on the website, they dropped the base rear wheel drive version, so you can't order one of those at all yet. Oh. All they have right now listed on the website is Foundation Series dual motor and tri-motor versions for $100,000 and $120,000. So the same ones they've been selling since they launched, just the Foundation Series, which to me kind of implies that, and we've seen there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. There's a lot of photos and videos posted online of parking lots, storage lots full of Cybertrucks waiting for somebody to buy them. So it kind of indicates that the pent-up demand, such as there was for the Cybertruck, has been satisfied, and now they just have a bunch of inventory of Foundation Series models that have already been pre-etched, that with the Foundation Series logo on there, which they can't just scrape it off like a sticker and sell them for 80 and 100. So now you can get one, no waiting. It's available right out of inventory. While they last. And then presumably once they sell off that inventory, then they'll finally start offering the non-Foundation Series models.
We're showing about 12,500 registered January through June.
Yeah. I think that's what I've seen
right.
as well. Yeah. So, with July, probably a couple thousand more.
All of them in
sure.
California.
No, there's a bunch
No,
in
not all of them.
Colorado.
I know.
I've seen a few here in Michigan. So, they're around, they're filtering around, but
you see a lot of them, again, of course, in EV land and Tesla land here in Northern California. So
yeah,
they're if you want to buy a Cybertruck, that's your jam.
Yeah,
that's you want what you want. The F-150 Lightning's a better truck. Just sorry, it is. But for a truck. But if you want something that looks absolutely different from everything else on the road, here you go.
Yeah, I mean the Lightning looks like any other F-150.
Yeah, you're just like, what, is that the Lightning? You like it? Oh, okay. Yeah, I see the lights are a little bit different.
Yeah.
The grill's a little different.
Yeah.
The Cybertruck, it is. I think my wife saw one. She's like, what the? She didn't say hell, but is that?
that was kind of my wife's response.
Why is that here? Why does it look like an upside down hat? Looks like a toy hat. It's just a triangle.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not in love with it. And one of my big issues with the Cybertruck design has always been that triangle shape makes it hard to get to the back of the bed from the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fundamentally,
unless you're about 7 feet tall, you can't just reach over the side of the bed.
Reach over. I mean, I'm short, so I can never reach over the side. So, but having said that, people like to move their stuff around in the back of the truck and access it. So when you have something in the fundamental design that makes it hard to use the vehicle for what it's designed for, I think you've missed the mark a little bit there.
It's not a work truck. It's like
but even a recreational truck. I mean,
it's not a recreation.
Point of a truck that you can't get to the back.
You can't get to the. You can only get to the back via the back. You can't get to the side, which is such a weird decision. But I mean, the person who designed it probably never owned a truck, and the person who designed it is Elon Musk. So there you go. He's like, you know what I want. And I will go to my grave reminding everyone that at the event, the Cybertruck unveil, when it first came out, everyone in that audience thought he was joking.
Yeah.
Everyone, there was a moment where everyone's like, okay, he's trolling us. Where's the real Cybertruck? And then, okay, yeah, this is it. And then I heard people afterwards talking themselves into liking it.
Oh my gosh.
So that is the legacy of the Cybertruck, is that for a moment, everyone thought this was a joke.
Yeah. And they all placed their $100 reservations, and then when it came time to it's time to fill out your order and put down your money, it's like $100,000, a lot less range than you promised. I don't think so.
Yeah. So again, but if you want something that looks completely different from everything else, if you want the Aztec of EVs, this is it. The DeLorean and the Aztec had a baby.
I would say the difference between this and the Aztec is the Aztec actually had functions that people liked and used, but Aztec owners liked it.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure we're hearing that out of the Cybertruck community yet, that they love the functionality of their brand new.
Oh, I don't know about functionality, but I think they love it because they love it. They love it for what it is, but the function
they love it because we hate it.
Yeah.
Yes. And because you have to after you've spent $100,000.
Yeah,
it's every 13-year-old who gets into a loud art punk band.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like this because my parents hate it, and then when they're 18, they're like, oh, I don't know what I was thinking. Unless you're me and you're still listening to art punk, and everyone around you is like, please turn that off.
Okay. The Volvo EX90 is started production in June. They should be starting customer deliveries soon. We're going to be driving it in a little over a week. The Volvo has raised the price by $3,300. And they also announced that there's a bunch of features that will not be available at launch. A lot of the driver assist features, because the software is just not done.
I'm not, and the CEO addressed that a little bit in the earnings call and said, "Wow, it's going to be okay because people now understand that over-the-air updates make your car better over time, and they're just going to expect that that's what's going to happen. So it's okay that we set a price."
Works for
saying
Tesla.
They would have these features, but Tesla, other than full self-driving, because that's very much a thing. But other than that, for the most part, Tesla, when you buy the car and the features that it says it has. And what we're seeing, what I think we're coming up with here with the EX90 is they said they were going to have these features at launch, and now they don't. So they're going to have it at some point at some over-the-air update and jump the price by $3,300.
Yeah.
Like, none of that scenario actually works. And, like it or not, Tesla was a brand that was able to do that. How many practical Volvo buyers are going to be like, yeah, no, I'm all right. Sure, here's another $3,300 for the feature that I might
the most
see
practical people in the world are buying Volvos, and we're like, hey, we're going to need some more money, and we're not going to give you all the things. They're just like, I'm just going to go buy a Subaru.
Yeah.
Or
I'll go buy an XC90 that has all the features that are listed on the feature sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just wait on this EV thing.
I'm okay with the idea that we'll see if it works, but with the idea that you're going to buy a car and you're going to get software updates, and maybe you'll pay for some of the updates, maybe some of them are free or whatever, and that's part of the new landscape. But I don't think you get to say you're going to have this feature. Oh no, you're not.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. That take back is where the issue is.
It's the take back. Yeah, I think that's the.
Well, I mean, the way it should be, and this applies to all automakers, including Tesla, is you say, here's the price of the car today. Here's some features that we're working on that will come eventually. We're not going to charge you for those today.
Right.
We're not going to charge you $12,000 for FSD because it doesn't exist. And if and when it does exist, we'll make it available. You can get it as an over-the-air update. You can just give us your Amex Black Card number and or your wire transfer number, and we'll take care of it. But you shouldn't be charging for features that don't exist. No, period. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. And so I suspect Volvo is going to get a bit of pushback on that, and that might. And the car's already still a year and a half, 2 years late. So that's gonna really slow that launch. Again, EVs being still early days and all of that, it doesn't mean that in 5 or 6 years Volvo doesn't recover from this, but I do think it's going to be problematic for their launch, which has already been difficult.
Yeah, I mean they've had the whole program was delayed by almost by 9 months, almost a year, and also the Polestar 3 because they both use the same platform because the software was just not ready, it wasn't done, and it had a lot of work to do, and and clearly there's a lot that's still not done.
Yeah. So, I mean, software's hard, right?
Yes.
It's incredibly hard. And I think a lot of automakers didn't realize how hard it is. And at this point, if you're not figuring it out, you are shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, even Volkswagen was finally like, you know what? Here, Rivian.
You do it.
You do it. Because we're
done.
We have no idea what we're doing.
We don't know what's going on. And, kudos to them for figuring that out, to be honest.
I'm going to say something else here too, though. When you look at software being difficult, and you look at software for a phone or a computer or something that you use all the time, you're depending on it. But if the software goes wrong, you can turn it off and turn it back on, or maybe you take it to the store or whatever. The software goes wrong in a car and somebody dies.
Yes, exactly. Like that's the big difference.
And the scope is really different. So I don't think that I'm really, and I'm not being not a software engineer, so maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's just that automakers can't figure it out and they didn't know what they were doing. I think the scope and the scale and the impact of a software error is a lot different.
Oh, it's incredibly different. So, but from what I've heard from people internally, is that people they just thought, well, we build cars, we can just do this. And it was that sort of hubris that sort of bit them in the ass.
To be fair, automakers have been doing software for 50 years.
Yeah.
But the software they're trying to do now is fundamentally different from what we were doing when I started my engineering career 30 plus years ago. The scope of what we were doing was a lot simpler. Doing one feature, not trying to do one set of software that controlled the entire vehicle. And we limited it to what we could actually deliver. There was a job one date for every program, and you work back from that, like 4 or 6 weeks from job one. Software's got to be done by that point. And at that date, you've got to be completely validated. And the expectation was that the software that we delivered on that date for job one was going to be in that vehicle for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years until that vehicle went to the scrapyard. And there was no expectation of updating it. So we knew it had to be right. So we deliberately limited the scope of what we tried to do to what we could actually do, and made sure that much of it worked. And now, you're delivering stuff that's only partially finished. And so you got to figure out, and it's trying to do so much more than what we ever tried to do 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah, because it was essentially SoC or firmware software.
Yeah.
It was just like whatever fits on this chip that does this one thing.
Yeah.
That's all it has to do is one thing on this chip, and it's relatively simple. And now you're dealing with multiple CPUs in a vehicle, multiple SoCs, multiple vendors, multiple this, and you're trying to make them all work together and all talk together while also creating this experience that people have come to expect from a vehicle. It's crazy bonkers hard.
It's crazy. And I think, we got into a little bit of in terms of talking about it, not necessarily the people actually working on it, but in terms of talking about it, this idea that we'll just, because every other electronic that we have, we just do over-the-air updates and it's simple and da-da-da. And it played better to Wall Street. It plays better to investors. It plays better to building up a story to say, oh, this is what we're going to do. But it's not so simple. And I remember when, GM got knocked around a bit, and everybody did, and Tesla's like, we're the heroes because we figured out how to do over the updates. You're all like dumb little people. You haven't figured that out yet because you're just too traditional and too old. And I remember probably 10 years ago at this point, but one of the concerns that GM mentioned was, well, we've got millions of vehicles on the road. When do you update it? Do you update it overnight when people are sleeping, or do you put it over? Like, how does this happen, and what happens, and what's the fail safe? And Tesla was on a blank slate at that point, didn't have as many vehicles on the road at that point, and also is plenty happy to beta test on people. So the thing was a lot different there, and I think that GM and Ford and the other automakers that slow rolled even the level of OTA that they have today were not wrong for doing so. The scope and the scale and the potential damage is just too high to go rush through it. As a whole industry, as the millions of vehicles. The U.S. vehicle park is 300 million units?
Yeah, I think the last time I looked, it was 290. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in that somewhere between 280 and 300,000 or 300 million units. It's a staggering number of vehicles to just be like, yes.
I mean, Rivian and Tesla, they have the benefit of starting from zero. Mm-hmm. They don't have legacy. They don't have to think about what's. I talked to Marcus, the CTO of Mercedes, about this, and he was just like, he's like, where do we start? And do we so you have to sort of stagger it, because you can't just be like, okay, we're putting all this stuff out, because they're trying to build the software defined vehicle over at Mercedes, where they control everything. They're essentially doing the Tesla Rivian model. And it's just like, where do we start? How do we get this? And then, how do you hire the talent away from, the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, where they're getting paid an extremely large amount of money for these sort of rock star developers? How do you, it's a new thing, and you're trying to build up a staff who knows what they're doing, and then figuring out a roadmap of doing this. And it's when you have, again, legacy and dozens of vehicles SKUs on the market, where as opposed to Rivian and Tesla, where they're like, well, we got three cars, or Rivian's, we got 2 cars. It's just where do you start? How do you do this? How do you make this a reality, and in a way where those Tesla and Rivian customers, they're going to be a lot more forgiving of weird software issues, where I just want to go out and buy a Volkswagen Jetta, and now the software doesn't work. Mm-hmm. What's happening here? Yeah, the person who's buying a Jetta is not the same person who's buying a Model 3, at least not 5-10 years ago.
And even Rivian just dropped 10 ECUs?
Yeah,
from 17 to 7. so, even they're evolving and iterating it, and their solution that's 3 years old um, needed to be updated and changed. So yeah, I do see
Software's
the
hard, man.
delays. Software's hard, but I don't know that they really came into it totally blindly. But it's still a ways to go. We still don't have a software defined vehicle. Yeah.
All right. Let's do one more story. And that is the 2025 GMC Terrain. Earlier this spring, we saw the 25 Equinox. The Terrain is the sibling of that vehicle. You saw it, right, Steph? You went to the backgrounder?
I've got the information.
Oh,
I didn't.
okay.
Not the backgrounder.
All right. So it's basically, pretty close to the same size as the old Terrain. Same, roughly the same overall length. It's a couple inches wider, a little bit taller than the old Terrain. Still the same powertrains. No electrification on here yet. It's just it's the 1.5 liter 4-cylinder turbo with 175 horsepower, which is, it's an adequate powertrain. It's fine. And one of and the styling, they're trying to bring it more in line with the rest of the current GMC lineup. A little more boxy, a little more rugged looking. Similar type of headlight design to what's on the latest Canyon. And interestingly, they're only going to have 3 trim levels now. So they simplified the trim walk a little bit. Used to have SL, SLT, AT4, and Denali. Now SL and SLT have been combined into one new base trim level, which they're calling Elevation. And usually when automakers launch new, redesigned models, they usually go to market first with the top end trim levels, the highest margin trim levels. But this time around, GMC is launching with just the base Elevation trim, which I thought was different. And so for model year 25, and these are going to be available starting late this year, like probably later in December. It's for the 25 model year, only the base Elevation trim is going to be available.
Yep.
And then for model year 26, sometime middle of next year, they'll add the AT4 off-roady version and the Denali luxury version. You guys had a chance to look at the photos?
Yeah, I like the way that it looks, at least photo wise. And it's interesting to go that route. And I think with a lot of the conversation about affordability in vehicles, I think that puts this in a nice position because it should be more affordable in that way. And the level of technology and the level of equipment is notably above the SL and the SLT, the outgoing ones. So it can still attract that attention for having more equipment and more features. And roll in the AT4s and the Denali a little bit later. I think at this particular point in time in the market, I think it's going to work out fine for them. And I like that the base trim level is called Elevation instead of SL.
Yeah,
like it doesn't. It's a name that sounds like it doesn't sound like a base trim level at all. That sounds like something a little better than that. So I think that's a clever name for a trim level too.
Yeah, I'm guessing like the base. The current base trim, actually SLE, I misspoke, starts at $30,000, and the SLT is $34,000. I'm guessing that the price on the Elevation is probably going to be closer to that $34,000 price point. So it's probably not going to the cheapest Terrain is probably not going to be as cheap as the cheapest 2024 model, but it's still relatively affordable. Even the current Denali is is only $40,000. The interior is a big change though, from the current models. Basically, they're going for the same kind of look across the board on all the GMC models now. They started with the Sierra EV, with the 17.5-inch portrait display with the the glued-on volume knob like the Mach-E and a row of switches across the bottom. Then they added the new Acadia with a 15-inch version of that screen. And now the Terrain's got the same 15-inch screen that's in the Acadia. So, very, very similar look and feel in all of these.
And the demand and the interest right now for technology and screens, it's good because it builds into that, leans into that attitude quite well. And the other thing is you're talking about scale and piece cost, and the more places you can put those screens, the cheaper they are. Yeah. So your customer gets something better than they expected. And you can do that because the cost is a little bit better because it's in more vehicles than it had been before. And just because I was looking at trim levels earlier today on the other cars that we were talking about, the SLE and the SLT through 24 in the outgoing car were 48% of the Terrains registered were SLE January through June, and 30% were SLT. So the elevation trim level is where it lives.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we asked the chief engineer about why they're launching with the elevation, and said most of the volume on Terrain is in the SLE SLT trims as opposed to higher penetration of the premium models like they have on their other vehicles. So made sense, to get this one out there first, both a little more affordable. Also the one other mechanical change that instead of the 9-speed transmission they had before, they're going back to an 8-speed. So simplify that a little bit as well. So take a little cost out there, and probably not something that's going to be noticeable to drivers.
No one's going to notice the 8-speed transmission versus the 9-speed transmission.
No.
Yeah.
And it is an entry product for GMC. So having Denali and AT4 available there is it leans into the brand, but to your point, it's not where most of these buyers are living. And you do need to kind of get into an upper segment before you have buyers that have the availability and the ability to step up to Denali or AT4. If you're still in GMC Terrain territory, you're looking at a different level, and people are a little bit more practical and don't necessarily have as much. And at that point, you're not going to necessarily add another $7,000 or $8,000 for a Denali on top of a GMC Terrain. I mean, these numbers make sense.
Yeah.
Few people will, but most people are just like, And so I think that the overall the update leans into where that consumer is, and should leave them well positioned. And updating it now means that they have a good solid ICE to take them through at least 2030.
Yeah. Well, one thing that was interesting from our conversations, I asked about electrification and, whether there would be a Terrain EV, to go along with the Equinox EV. And they said, not right now.
Right.
And I asked about the hybrids, because earlier this year, GM said, yep, we're going to bring back some hybrids into the lineup. And I said, for model year 25 and 26, the 1.5 liter is the engine that we have, but hinted very strongly at model year 27, which is the time frame that they said when they would start bringing back hybrids. This is likely to be one of the vehicles where we'll see a hybrid powertrain of some sort, whether it's a regular hybrid or plug-in hybrid. The Terrain, looks like it might be the place where we start to see those hybrids roll out in the GM lineup again.
They may be looking at what's happening with CRV.
Yeah, CRV.
And they had committed.
Bring back the Volt. Bring back.
They had committed to plug-in hybrids instead of hybrids, and that instinctively we thought they were going to go bigger than that. But no, we don't see a Terrain EV happening. We do see a C-segment SUV EV for GMC coming in a couple of years, but they're not going to mess around with the Terrain. It would be interesting if they did a hybrid on the Terrain. A plug-in hybrid, I'm not sure it's going to be the best application for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the Terrain, in that size vehicle, certainly they're selling more RAV4 hybrids or RAV4 primes now. Hyundai and Kia sell Tucson and
Right.
Sportage plug-in hybrids and regular hybrids. So I mean, once you've done the engineering for a plug-in hybrid or a hybrid, doing the other one is a lot less involved. As long as you can package the bigger battery of the plug-in, it's fairly straightforward because the powertrain itself is largely the same for the most part. So it wouldn't surprise me to see potentially both, but at least a standard hybrid in the Terrain and probably the Equinox as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it goes in Terrain, it would likely go in the Equinox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is, I think, all we want to do this week. I had a couple other things, but we can leave those for another time. I also had a conversation earlier this week with Joerg Grotendorst, who's the Senior VP of Corporate R&D at Magna International. And we had a pretty good conversation hitting on a lot of topics, including electrification and software-defined vehicles. And that will be coming up right after we say goodbye to you all. But so make sure you listen to that because Joerg had a lot of very interesting things to say. But Steph, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yay.
And we'll talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye. I don't know why I wave.
We're here to see it. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'm talking today with Joerg Grotendorst, the Senior Vice President of Corporate R&D at Magna International. Joerg, welcome to the conversation today. And I'd like to start off for those in the listening audience that are not familiar with Magna. Pretty much everyone in the auto industry knows who Magna is, but give us a little bit of background on Magna and what the company is, what they do.
Well, first, Sam, thank you very much for the invitation. My pleasure to talk to you today. And we both then have a discussion about the car of the future and future technologies. But who is Magna? We are one of the top 5 industry so-called tier 1 suppliers. Magna is a little bit special because compared to other tier 1s, these are suppliers that directly ship to the car manufacturers, whom we call OEMs. But we even have the capabilities to design and produce full vehicles. So we do this together with the OEMs if they have shortages in manufacturing capacity or engineering for full vehicle. All in all, we have a turnover more than 40 billion USD, close to 180,000 employees, more than 300 production locations worldwide. So we are a pretty large player in the automotive arena.
Yeah, and Magna through the Magna Steyr division, as you mentioned, producing complete vehicles. The company has produced many vehicles, many models that people are familiar with for many different manufacturers, including BMW, Aston Martin, Jaguar, Toyota, Chrysler in the past, Jeep, and numerous others. So you're a company that is capable of producing pretty much almost any component for the vehicle, up to and including full vehicles. So that's pretty impressive. So
right, yeah, we do a lot of large systems. So body in white, for example, which is of course our largest division, and not in terms of revenue, but in terms of components as well. And then we go further down from seatings to mirrors, even to automotive electronics and driver assistance systems as well. So a very, very wide portfolio.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity over the last several years at various events, both here in Troy, Michigan, as well as at CES, to try out a number of the latest technologies being developed by Magna, by the various groups within Magna, including driver assistance systems, which we talk about a lot on the show from various companies. The industry, the auto industry, is in a real state of transition right now. I mean, I've been in the auto industry for more than 30 years myself. I spent 17 years as an engineer, and the the rate of change of what's happening right now is more than we've ever seen in such a short period at any time in the history of the vehicle. Talk a little bit about how things are changing and how your perspective on that.
Well, you're absolutely right, Sam. There are a lot of topics coming together these days. First, of course, is the challenge of CO2 and global warming. And we have on almost all three big markets, Americas, Europe, and Asia, regulations in place how to reduce or how far to reduce CO2 tailpipe emissions all around. And this, of course, goes hand in hand with electrification. And this means more changing from combustion engine driven vehicles to battery electric vehicles. But the battery by itself still a very, very large and a very expensive component, which of course puts a challenge onto everybody's activities, not only for the OEMs, but as well for the suppliers. On the other hand, we have more and more features, software and microcontroller capacity is growing rapidly. Now we have artificial intelligence jumping in. So expectation for driver assistance systems and in-vehicle infotainment and navigation and online capabilities of the vehicles are growing dramatically by the end consumer. So we have another challenge here to bring in new technology. And of course, if we then change from existing development cycles for vehicles, which normally in the history have been around 4 to 5 years, and consumers are more used to mobile device software frequency updates, which is much, much shorter, of course, sometimes not even a year. And this is now another challenge that the automotive industry has to deal with. And that's why we even go from conventional architecture with some hundreds of ECUs in the vehicle to domain and what we call zonal architectures, which are easier to handle for software design and software maintenance.
Yeah, let's start off with what's come to be known as software defined vehicles. When I worked as an engineer, I worked predominantly on software. I'm trained as a mechanical engineer, but I worked on software for most of my 17-year engineering career. But it was very different the way we did it from the way it's being done now. And that's having an impact both on the nature of the vehicles, but also on the business for companies like Magna, because it used to be, we started putting software in cars in the 1970s, and OEMs, automakers, would buy a feature from a supplier that came as a package with some actuators, some sensors, and an ECU with some embedded software. And now, as we make that transition to domain architectures and zonal architectures, as you refer to them, the way the industry is working is changing pretty fundamentally. Talk a little bit about that, how that's impacting the way your engineering teams at Magna work and the business as well.
You're absolutely right, Sam. I mean, you referred to the 1970s. I think the first electronic device, including software, at that time was the engine control unit. Yeah, and the second one may have been braking systems, anti-lock braking, and from that time onwards, of course, software growth was rapidly. It always went hand in hand with microcontroller calculation performance. So this technology has as well by far outgrown the size of the automotive market and the automotive's applications by itself. But now we are in a changing period, as you said. We have recently vehicles on the market that have even sometimes 100 or even more ECUs inside, and you can't manage from a OEM perspective to update all those ECUs when the vehicle is in the hand of the end customer. So we are changing to platforms where we have even larger computing units in the vehicle, and they are then fully uploaded by software functions, as we know this from computers or mobile devices like handies. And you are as well pretty right, the automotive industry is not used to. As you said, at the time, our customers were buying, let's say, intelligent systems. So this was a mirror actuator camera system with an ECU, and all the function was in there. And now we are in the transformation to change to a software-driven business, which we as well know from the mobile device industry as apps, App Store or whatever. We as Magna, together with GM and Vipro, have set up a platform for that, which is sdverse.auto. But the industry is not right there. It's hard to find a price tag for the software function. What is a customer willing to pay for? And does this really compensate the R&D effort and the qualification of such a software? So this is still a trend where we are in between right now, not having really found the fundament how to give a price tag to software function. And this will be a hard time, especially for the suppliers, because the procurement side from our customers is not really prepared to buy software instead of hardware.
Yeah, when I was working on this stuff up until 2007, when a supplier gave a price for a feature, that included that software, and essentially once it was shipped, once production started on a particular model, that software was not generally expected to change over the life of that vehicle. Once it went into a vehicle, unless there was some major problem that required a recall, that's what stayed in there until the car went to the scrapyard. That's no longer the case. We've, starting with Tesla, with doing over-the-air updates of all kinds of different features in the car. Now the life cycle, the development life cycle has changed pretty fundamentally. And as you mentioned, how you pay for that, instead of just paying for it once when the manufacturer buys that component or buys that feature, now you have to figure out how you're going to pay for that development for 5, 10, 15 years of the vehicle life cycle.
Absolutely right. I mean, some of the listeners may already be used to that software case. For example, navigation data. You see, when you nowadays buy a vehicle, some years ago, you got a CD with the vehicle that you then had to put into the data system, and then the system get uploaded with the navigation software, at least the maps. Yeah. And nowadays you are used to have an interface, sometimes with the driver's own handy, sometimes you have a SIM module inside the car, but then you can either get the software for free. Some of the OEMs offer that in the first 3 years, or you have to pay for. And this will become a standard for most of the functions that you have. So this may be autopilot functions, system updates, of course, driven majorly by infotainment, news channels, data streamers, video streamers, and so on. So it's a clear must, because end consumers are expecting that, and the automotive industry has to react and has to find solution for that. But as I said, we have it for some of those applications. Navigation data, mapping data is a good example, and even adding social media or filming platforms into the system. But we are not yet there for real software update that improve vehicle behavior, driving dynamic, autopilot function, and so on and so on. This is to come in the next 5 to 10 years, of course.
Yeah, and one of the things we've heard over the last several years from automakers is a lot of the major legacy automakers have talked about bringing a lot more of the software development that was traditionally done by their suppliers in-house, handling more of the software themselves. Many automakers have struggled with that process. How is that development process evolving, and the relationship between the supplier and the automakers? And are you seeing a continuing evolution of what the automaker wants to do versus what the supplier does?
Well, I think what the automakers want to do is, most important, to create a platform for an ecosystem. Nowadays, if you buy several ECUs, we mostly worldwide are adapted to the so-called AUTOSAR standard, which is a standard that defines some signals and its relation to physical real sensor data. But again, if we look into the mobile phone industry, I mean, Apple has their own operating system, Google with Android has their own, and it's a clear must for the OEM. If they want to manage complexity, they have to define their own operation systems. If this is individually OEM by OEM or a multi-OEM system, that's a total different question we could ask, but they need a standardized operating system to offer new applications based on this operating system. They have to make sure it's running stable, and of course they can diagnose and excesses when the vehicle is driving on the market. This is a fundamental change, yes, because nowadays, as said when referring to the AutoSAR standard, most tier one have done their own software design, and each and every one had his own or adapted operating system, and this is now set on a new platform. But we see different OEMs with different software solutions, so the market will not be harmonized. But is it a real must that they harmonize? That depends on the brand of the OEM. What kind of functions do they want to implement, and what is best for their individual infrastructure and customer expectations? So it will shift, but it will not completely go away from the tier ones. But tier ones have to address different operation systems for different OEM. That's for sure.
One of the big changes in the architecture is, as we've made this shift from individual distributed ECUs around the car to a more centralized platform. Instead of the software in the past, it would just traditionally look at the sensors, read the sensors, get that data, and then send commands to the actuators. We're now doing that through application programming interfaces, APIs in that software platform. Even though different manufacturers are now developing their own platforms, do you see, I know GM, for example, last year, I think it was last year, or maybe the year before, contributed their APIs for their platform to Covisa, so that at least those API definitions, if not necessarily how they're implemented, but at least the function calls could be commonized across different vehicles. Do you see any progress on that, so that, for example, for Magna, if you're working with a GM or Ford or Toyota or anybody else, you don't necessarily, if you're doing, say a blind spot monitoring system, you don't have to have totally different code for every different manufacturer. You don't have to completely rewrite it. Is there any progress on that front?
Of course, we as tier one, and as said, one of the largest players in the world, we try to create what we call building blocks within the software. So what kind of minimal functions can we have in between all the software salad that we see from different OEMs and their interfaces? What kind of so-called building block software functions can we encapsulate and then reuse? And the more complex the environment becomes, of course, the smaller these building blocks have to be, just to make sure they fit into each and every software. We see API. Yes, we see some kind of standardization. Everybody is relying on physical data or an image data, not only on pixel information or whatever. So we really try to figure out what kind of object and environmental data do we see. And does this make sense? Yes, of course. For the OEMs, it makes sense to get to some kind of high calculation or high performance calculation platforms. We must not forget, with 100 ECUs in a vehicle, this is an amazing complexity. And you must not forget the number of ECUs, which cost a lot of money. You have wiring effort going hand in hand with that. We have even connectors, which are nowadays the failure source number one when it comes to a long-term reliability of the vehicle. So it's not only software by itself. It's a full approach from an existing legacy architecture to a domain, and at the end station, at least, to a zonal architecture where we have large computing units that calculate calculate individual parts in the vehicle, which have not to be fully aligned with the system architecture, because different systems can be read from different ECUs and then virtually put together to a function and control. And I think that's a major point where at the end, the OEMs can manage complexity, can manage reliability, and can manage serviceability for the whole architecture and the approach. That all in all makes sense.
It's funny how the more things change, the more things stay the same. You mentioned that connectors are number one failure point. In 1990, when I started working at Delco Moraine on ABS, the first quality meeting I sat in on, when like a few days after I started, they were talking about, where are the failure points? It was connectors for the wheel speed sensors. And so sounds like some things never change.
Maybe, but we must not forget. At the time you were referring to, we had really higher amount of energy, so larger currents and larger voltages going through the pins. Nowadays, we must not forget. We talk even in the vehicle about Ethernet connections up to 10 gig and shielded wiring. So even the connection by itself, made it physical way forward. And of course, with high data rate, we have to really make sure that the connection can work properly, and of course with all the environmental stress that we see on such a connection, vibration, temperature, etc., that you can never imagine for a mobile phone or a home computer or PlayStation or whatever. The system has to work, and everybody's expecting that. It's good as long as it's working, but with a small malfunction, every driver and user will be irritated immediately, and sensing something's going wrong, and maybe an easy failure in a connection, but with a very big malfunction for the vehicle overall.
And that highlights one of the challenges in developing anything for automotive is that that huge variation in environmental conditions. Over the weekend, I was shooting some video for something with my phone, and after about 10 minutes of shooting, it stopped recording because it was saying the phone was getting too hot and it had to cool off. And clearly, that's if you're relying on cameras in your car or other sensors for driver assist systems or anything else, that's not acceptable. Vehicles have to be designed to operate from 40 below zero to 120 Fahrenheit or 40 Fahrenheit or Celsius, and in all kinds of humidity and conditions, salt exposure and vibration and everything else. So that poses some real challenges in trying to make these advanced systems work. That is not the case in most of the technology industry.
Definitely. Very good example. I like that, Sam. Well, to most of the people who are not really familiar with the automotive industry, I always tell them, imagine wintertime, minus 40 degrees, high snow, throw your mobile phone into the snow, and wait until it's cooled down within 10 hours or whatever, and then turn it on and expect what you can see on the screen, maybe even nothing. But for an electric powertrain, of course, everybody expect, even if the battery is so cold, that you can turn on the vehicle, and almost right away get it started and drive away. And another very good example, temperature for the camera that you mentioned. Imagine the front camera for ADAS system. They did sit almost in the heat spot of the vehicle underneath the roof in the cabin, but directly at the windshield. So if you're driving south at midday and the sun is really shining onto this camera, we see even temperatures that get around 100 degrees Celsius for such a camera. And then everybody is expecting, of course, as the system works properly. And we as engineers have to find solutions how to cool it down, because at an inner temperature of more than 100 degrees, it will be critical, of course, for the cameras and for the electronics inside. That's a challenge that automotive industry is facing, and totally different than normally the mobile device or communication industry.
And another fundamental difference from the technology industry. Everybody, a lot of people point towards the technology industry. Why can't the automakers and suppliers move as fast as a Google or an Amazon or Apple in developing new technologies. But one of the key differences is the fact that a moving vehicle, it's a safety critical system. And with software, I know the industry has been trying to recruit more software developers from technology and from other areas, bring them in to work on all these systems. How has that transition gone in trying to bring in people and get them into that mindset of safety first? Not just moving fast, but also doing it, making sure that everything is safe. And what's been the biggest challenge for a company like Magna in doing that?
Well, the biggest challenge is, of course, that software functions and signal inputs and outputs for cameras and monitors grow rapidly. That's of course something we have to manage in all systems. If we talk about driving functions, if we talk about camera systems, not only for camera, but radar, ultrasonic, thermal sensors. And the key element for the automotive industry is, of course, that we have a so-called DVP. We call this DVP, Design Verification Plan. So that means we really need a lot of testing before we have the right to release a system. Normally it's a catalog. Of course, every company working industry has more or less the same or even an extended catalog. But imagine that even with the use of AI and video simulation that we could do for a camera systems, some OEMs, before we are allowed to release a perception stack for a camera, require more than 1 million kilometers in driving on the road. This could be easily done, of course, with video simulation, but of course a video simulation is never as close as 1 million kilometers on the road where you can have any kind of malfunction. And we are slowly turning towards a hardware driven business and mileage on the road to a software driven industry, using even for the test and verification automated simulation tools. And this is a tough way to go because, as you said, a lot of those functions are safety relevant. And of course, if you really have a serious accident and somebody gets injured or even worse, then you always have to ask yourself, did I do everything which is in the environment or which is in the framework of actual technology that I could have done to prevent this situation? And this is totally different from the mobile industry. Let me give you a very easy example. If you in a video call or in an audio call only, and you bypass a strong broadcasting situation, may this be for radio or for radar or whatever, your video call may stop because you have EMC interference, so electromagnetic disturbances in the infrastructure of a mobile phone. But imagine that while driving an autopilot or having a braking, or suddenly your vehicle really pulls down or opens up the engine torque and vehicle can accelerate or suddenly decelerate. Imagine that must not happen in a car. It's a situation that has to be under control, and then customers are expecting that, and we have to work towards that. So total different requirements as in the mobile industry. And getting back to your question, is it easy to find people? No, it's not, especially automotive experience that we need in that area, and that means long training. And with all the application software functionality and easy to learn programming language like Python or whatever, sometimes young students better like to design new functions than really testing them, trying them out, and make them more robust under all circumstances that you can imagine. That's a challenge, not only for the suppliers, but as well for the automakers by themselves.
Yeah, I think that's to some degree that's always been a challenge, is that distinction between developing something new and then being in the maintenance phase. And it's like you don't necessarily, you don't want to be the one that's got to maintain something and continuously improve it. You want to be working on new stuff all the time. So how has the culture and the working processes at Magna evolved in recent years to try to keep everyone both satisfied and focused, satisfied in their work and focused on, doing, both creating new, but also maintaining and ensuring that you're doing everything in the safest way possible?
Well, in the recent years, we have developed, of course, and invested massively in testing systems. Yeah, first there's a hardware test, and then the next level is hardware in the loop, where we create a system where an ECU bears a software inside, and then we install the system in a test rig, so that from the inner perspective of the system, it doesn't realize it's not built in a car, but in a test rig. Yeah. And this is, of course, more and more automated to do as many tests on the test rig as we can. But recently, since years, we as well do software in the loop. As you have mentioned, we have standard APIs, and I said we have building blocks. So what we try to do is implement these building block functions into a test environment, so that with stimulations from the outside world, we can test the software and see if on any kind of input vector we have the right output and can prevent malfunctions and even diagnose it. And this is massively grown over the last years, and especially now with ADAS systems, we further grow. We continuously invest in test capability and test procedures, including, of course, AI algorithms to find something out.
So, shifting gears a little bit to the ADAS systems that you just mentioned, where do you see that going in the auto industry? For much of the last decade, there was a lot of focus on fully automated driving systems, and we kind of pulled back quite a bit from that, as people have realized the difficulty of doing that. And now back to a lot more focus on more advanced assist systems. What do you see? Where do you see the balance being in the next decade, for what sorts of features, what sorts of capabilities we'll have in our vehicles going forward?
Well, if we think about automated driving, everybody here in the audience should even ask himself, what am I willing to pay for? And if a fully automated driven vehicle would cost me an extra 40,000 USD, 35,000 euros, would I be willing to pay for? And if not, what is, let's say, the limit I'm willing to invest into a vehicle that has some kind of autonomous functionality? I'm absolutely convinced for the next decade, we will majorly talk about what we call level 2 and level 2 plus driving. This means automated driving in dedicated situations. This can be downtown, mostly, of course, seeing on the highway when you have a longer ride that you want to get onto, and then, of course, not to become tired and get relaxed in between. I think there's a lot of benefit for functionality that then the vehicle can take over full control of the vehicle, and the driver can concentrate on something else. This even includes, of course, automatic lane changes and overtaking maneuvers. Will this go to 200 kilometers per hour and even beyond? No, definitively not. This is an extraordinary situation that some vehicles have to apply, but I'm convinced that the majority of the vehicle drivers and users will use this functionality. And on shorter rides, even if you have some minutes to go to the office in the morning, or may this be on the highway or even downtown, I see a rate of customers that even don't need this function, because a lot of people enjoy riding the vehicle, and for them it's some kind of relaxing in the morning or in the evening, calm down after a tough day in the office or at work, wherever. So fully autonomous driving level 4 or level 5 will not happen in the next decade on a really relevant market segment. It will go up to level 2 plus, and for level 3, we need more redundancy in the vehicle, that this will create a jump in costs, and with that, a jump in price for the OEMs. Where I, at the moment, see we need to further wait time, that the computing power will even become a less expensive, cost will go down, and as well as performance sensors, may this be camera, radar, or even LiDAR, has to further come down, that the extra burden for this functionality in terms of price is much less as we see it right now.
And for the listeners, level 2+ is referring to hands-off but eyes-on systems where the driver is still watching the road and ready to take control. Systems like GM Super Cruise, Ford's Blue Cruise, and various others. And then level 3 being the where you can go hands-off and eyes-off under limited conditions, but the driver still has to be present and ready to take control in some period of time. And of course, one of your customers is BMW, who recently launched a level 3 system on the 7 Series in Germany, and we'll see if that expands to other markets. So, do you think that level 3 type systems will get more widespread adoption in the next decade, or is that going to remain fairly limited to maybe to the higher end of the vehicle market?
I expect both. It will have a significant share, I guess. But as you said, you referred to the 7 Series. Mercedes has this in the S-Class right now. Yeah, it will be in the upper, in the more luxury vehicle segment, because it's an extra burden in terms of price. Do I see a mass market, really penetration to compact cars or whatever in the next decade? No, I do not foresee this in the next 8 to 10 years. It will take a while, and we will see much more level 2 and level 2+ vehicles on the road in this decade.
Okay. So let's shift again and turn our focus towards electrification. A lot of the emphasis in the last several years has also been on electrifying propulsion in vehicles. We've certainly had hybrids now for 25 years. We've got mild hybrids. We've got battery electric vehicles for the last 15 years. And the market seems to be kind of stumbling a bit right now, trying to figure out what's the way forward in the near term. We had some significant growth of battery electric vehicles, and that's at least the growth rates have tapered off. How do you see the industry transitioning, and what types of vehicles do you think we'll see that will be driving over the coming years? Do you see more hybridization or more to?
We are definitively humbling, especially since this year. We had a hype on growing of electric vehicles over the last 3 to 4 years. But why you said, let's again look around the worldwide markets. And let's take China for reference, where we still have a by far stronger growth of battery electric vehicles than in all the other markets. It's, of course, a market that is strongly regulated by political and social regulations, but it shows if all the industries work hand in hand. So automotive industry, and of course the government with legislation, and energy providers, and then fuel stations and charging infrastructure work hand in hand. There is almost, I will not say no barrier, but at least in large areas, there are very, very low barriers, and the penetration of, in China, called new energy vehicles grow rapidly. We have another region that is working pretty well, is Norway. And Norway has since years a strong fundamental growth in battery electric vehicles because they have so much energy, electrical energy, that they can support and have invested into the infrastructure. So what do I want to say with that? If we have a hand-in-hand automotive industry, plus energy providers, plus infrastructure, plus, of course, financial regulations and environmental regulation, if they go hand in hand, it will work. Nobody is a different opinion that the electric propulsion system is the best system of the future. We have energy efficiency of more than 90% with an electric drivetrain, whereas a combustion engine powertrain, we call it ICE, has an efficiency of roughly around 30%, maybe a little bit more. So in terms of efficiency, how the energy is to be used, there's no way beside of electrification. But as always in the automotive industry, first as a driver, it needs regulation. Do we like it or not? But imagine, would anybody of us invest into a catalyst or a diesel particle filter if there was no legislation to do so? I'm sure even some people won't buy airbags. They won't buy anti-lock braking systems. So since I'm in the industry for more than 25 years right now, legislation was always driving standards in automotive industry. Unfortunately, now what happened is that the market and the technology evolved in the automotive industry, but the infrastructure is not there, especially in Europe. If you have high frequencies of travels on the major highways, Autobahn that go across the Alps, now we have summertime, a lot of people going on vacation on the same highway. And then if they all stop and want to refill the batteries at the same point, there is not enough energy at that point. So that the electrical energy peaked in terms of price. And that's one of the reasons why we really struggle at the moment, because the price at these hotspots is somewhere even higher than for gasoline cars. So the end customer is not really benefiting from the what we call TOC, total cost of ownership. Sorry, TCO, total cost of ownership. Yeah, if you have to pay more for an electric vehicle because you have to pay for the battery, then you should save the money because you have less costs to fuel the car. If this benefit is gone, so you pay more even to fuel, to load the car, reload the car, charge the car, and you have a higher entry price, the total cost of ownership is not anymore given. And that's what happened right now. Additionally to the fact that there's some kind of anxiety in the market that the battery technology may change rapidly. So we have new technology. And if new technology is out, the old technology, it's always falling down massively in terms of price. So what is about the residual value of my car? So a lot of points coming right now together. But from my personal perspective, if we would have a strong alignment in between energy and automotive industry, it would be possible, very easy. But maybe we need governmental forces and alignment to do so. And of course, with the oil industry and other players in the market, there is a strong resistance to really push forward this future road and future roadmap to CO2-free mobility. This is a political situation, not a technological one.
Are you seeing more of that collaboration between the automotive industry and energy providers to perhaps share data about where vehicles are being used, how they're being used to help the energy industry in terms of their planning to make sure they've got capacity where it's needed?
I see in all the markets ongoing discussions. And of course, the OEMs are really caught in a trap because CO2 regulations are out. They are given by the authorities. And next year in Europe, we have 75 grams per kilometers of tailpipe emission CO2. So the OEMs are forced to have a catalog of technology where vehicles overall, let's say so, pure ICE vehicles, hybrids, and battery electric vehicles stay underneath these threshold value. Otherwise, there's a high additional cost that they have to pay. And everything or every term of electrification, may this be hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or battery electric vehicle, is the right way. And some of the OEMs are even discussing flat rates for their customers. So in Europe, we see now several OEMs that have contracts with energy providers. So when you buy a car for a small extra charge fee, you can then buy a contract that whenever you get to any kind of, I don't want to give some names or brands for energy providers, but that you get a special OEM price for the current and the energy that you recharge when you stop at the energy provider where the contract is signed with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sounds like that's one of the many pieces of the puzzle to try to give consumers that confidence that this is the right direction for them to take. One last area I want to get into, Magna produces most of the components for electric drive systems. You produce motors, you produce hybrid drive units, and various other elements and power electronics. One area that you're not involved in, to my knowledge at least, is battery development, at least not to a significant degree. But I'd be curious, on your thoughts on where you see battery technology going. I'm sure, even though you're not necessarily producing batteries, you're certainly working with companies that are producing them and to integrate them with your systems. What do you see as the key developments in battery technology in the coming years?
Well, two different aspects, but let me start. What at Magna are we doing for battery technology and electric vehicle energy storage systems? Well, we have a division that we call Cosma. They are very successful in designing battery trays. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't really sound artificial. A battery tray is just a box where you put in a battery. You close the box and that's it. Yeah, but
still an important part, though.
Right. For a battery electric vehicle, exactly. Yeah, you're writing the point. For a battery electric vehicle, I mean, there's a lot of chemical energy caught in a battery and has to be protected. Yeah, front crash, side crash, impact. Everybody knows what this means. But it's not only safe encapsulation and crash protection, is as well stabilization and then the art of taking out material. We talk nowadays about cell to chassis, so that the battery design, the mechanical design by itself, is a part of the vehicle. And for example, you do not need an extra chassis or body underfloor, but you can use the battery just to stabilize the vehicle. And then we talk about using the battery to really to its extreme points with cooling or tempering it. And therefore we have a dedicated technology how to cool the cells and pack them into the battery tray, that the battery tray by itself is very, very light but stable, has an excellent thermal behavior, and with that, of course, offer maximum performance of the battery by itself. What kind of technologies do we see? Just getting back to your question, different drivers at the moment. Due to the high cost of different chemical compositions, we have NMC, so mangan, cobalt applications in the vehicle. We have LFP, which is based on iron and phosphate, much cheaper, with the disadvantage that it is a little bit more heavy than NMC and not as energy efficient as the NMC ones. But we see more and more applications taking the disadvantages or accepting the disadvantage to lower the price and cost of the vehicle. So cost is one major driver to get this really high battery cost, which can be up to 50% of a full battery electric vehicle, down and have a more affordable solution. On the other way, we see, of course, going away from the liquid electrolyte in a vehicle to a solid state, which is a really hard electrolyte, being in the lithium-ion technology. But we are not as far down the road as with liquid electrolyte right now in terms of fast charging, so frequency and numbers of cycles you could charge and discharge it. But the technology will be ready, I guess, in the next 5 to 6 years. There are a lot of companies in researching and investing into that, which then answers the questions, why are we not in at Magna? We focus on our core competencies, software know-how, driver systems, and mechanical know-how. We are not a chemical company. So for us, it was not the question to invest into battery cells and chemistry. I think we are very, very good in integration, managing the performance, help the OEMs to get maximum performance and maximum range out of the battery. But there are large chemical companies outside in the world which have much, much more competence in designing such kind of devices than Magna.
Right. Well, I want to be cognizant of your time. You've been very gracious this morning. Are there any other topics that you want to bring up before I let you go that we haven't already discussed on the future?
Yes, of course. One topic that we didn't even discuss, and we could have another session on that, is the recycling and sustainability requirements we see. Because these, with, today, more or less all the plastics and all the complex ingredients of the vehicles are thrown away afterwards. It starts with the tires and ends with the seatings, And for the car of the future, we do not only talk about the product design by itself, so what kind of features does it have to offer, but what kind of materials are we using some of the OEMs being on the market already today, they have already done some advertising with natural materials being in seats. We have a technology that we call Ecosphere, where we have monomaterial plastics inside so that you can one-on-one recycle the seating afterwards. But this starts not only at seating. We have this everywhere. We have this in powertrain. We have even now rare earth materials inside, magnets that are mined in China, Australia, Africa under really, really horrible circumstances, very often with children's work inside. So we have to make sure that the car of the future is not only a, let's say, mobile phone on wheels, but we have to make sure that it is a sustainable solution as well. Everybody in the audience may know that last year we had the World Earth Day when we already got consumed all the sustainable resources within 1 year. So that's something that matters to mankind. And we have to make sure for the car of the future that we find sustainable solutions, and not only for the product by itself, for the manufacturing. How do we create the energy in our plants? And what is about water? How much water do we need for such a vehicle? How much fresh water? How can we recycle water? So as I've mentioned, a very, very wide field in the area of designing a vehicle and producing it and afterwards recycle it, and to make sure we all distribute to create a better world and better environmental circumstances that is then really standing for future mobility in a more sustainable world than we have nowadays.
Thinking about, again, going back to the software discussion, the entire life cycle of the vehicle from cradle to grave, everything that goes into it, eventually has to come out. And what do we do with those materials at the end of the vehicle life cycle? What, being able to reuse the materials rather than starting from scratch every time is ultimately going to be much more sustainable. Well, I really appreciate your time today. This has been a great discussion, and hopefully we can do this again soon and maybe delve more into recycling and materials and a whole bunch of other topics.
Yeah, thank you very much for the good discussion, Sam. It was a pleasure for me to talk to you this morning.
All right, thanks. I'm going to end here.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.